All right, opening statements this morning in the trial of Donna Adelson, that's the South Florida grandmother, accused in the plot to murder her former son-in-law. The prosecution went first this morning and told the jury all about the conversations that Donna Adelson had with her son, Charlie. Charlie has already been convicted for his role in the murder plot and is a state witness in his mother's trial.
And then Charlie Adelson immediately calls the defendant to let her know everything's fine and he has handled the situation. He does this using some pretty obvious code words that you'll often hear these conspirators use to mask the meaning of what they're talking about in case law enforcement's listening.
And you heard an awful lot about why they think Donna Adelson has the motive to kill Danny Markel. And you heard an awful lot about what other people did in this case. But not a single piece of evidence was discussed that shows that Donna Adelson planned this, hired anybody to do this, or intended that this happen.
All right. There you have it, everybody. Welcome back Inside the Law. I'm your host, Philip Holloway. This, of course, is your LawTube channel where we take you inside the real justice system using real cases, things that you see and hear in the news every day, because we want to try to learn something. We want to learn how it really works. We're going to take you into our world. And we do that, of course, in the context of these cases. And this brings us to the so-called mother-in-law mastermind murder case involving Donna Adelson, now underway in Leon County, Florida. That's Tallahassee. Now, there's a lot to break down in this case. And fortunately, I don't have to do it myself. But as you see, we've got opening statements that have occurred. We've gotten into some of the evidence now after we've took the better part of a week to pick a jury. But in order to help me break all this down, I've got some friends and colleagues. I'm going to start out in no particular order. Welcome, first time Inside the Law, Jonna Spilbor. She's a great criminal litigator up in the New York area. And she's also one of my colleagues on MK True Crime, as is Matt Murphy, former homicide prosecutor out west in California. Welcome to the channel, both of you guys. And of course, our friend Dave Aronberg, also another one of our MK True Crime colleagues, and the former state attorney for Palm Beach County. I've got Leon County on the brain, Palm Beach County, Florida. And, you know, Dave has a personal connection with this case. And so, you know, look, I'm going to go ahead, Dave. I know you've only got just a half hour or so with us here this afternoon, but I wanted to sort of get into this whole thing about, you know, we've got opening statements that have occurred. We've had some testimony, but also we've had an admonition by the judge of Donna Adelson about her emotions. And I want to talk about this in just a minute.
Before we go on the recess break this afternoon, I do believe this merits a small bit of discussion on the topic. The matters that we've discussed at sidebar concerning emotional responses, I do feel it is important at this point. Mrs. Adelson, when the testimony is occurring or the evidence, I know you may have a natural reaction, but as best possible, you need to control your reactions concerning any head movements, any expressions of disagreement, or any emotional outbursts. The jury must decide this matter on the merits, on the evidence. Do you understand this? Very well. I do not wish to do this in front of the jurors at all, but it's very important that you are able to control your emotions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
All right. So to further set the stage just a little bit, I'm going to pop up a real quick graphic that I've got here, a picture that shows the various persons involved in this case. This is something that the defense referenced in their cross-examination. They had their own sort of a layout, if you will, of all the potential players. On the far right, you've got the two gang members. You've got Luis Rivera, Tato, and then Tuto, Sigfredo Garcia, And Dave, help me out. Is it McBanois? Am I saying that right? Catherine
Correct.
McBanois?
Yep,
Right?
Catherine Katie McBanois.
Okay, and so she's been convicted, as has Charlie Adelson there in the center, and now his mother Donna being on trial. And then, of course, next to her is Donna's husband Harvey. Top left is the victim in the case, Dan Markel, and the big question mark there, Wendy Adelson, who was Dan's wife, ex-wife at the time of his murder. And the charges against Donna are 1 count of murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, and then 1 count of solicitation for others. So this is all about a big conspiracy. All right, Dave, you watched and you caught up on the first day of the actual trial. What are your thoughts?
I thought it went well for the prosecution. There were some surprises. First, it's clear to me, I guess, that the defense doesn't really have a defense. They're going to be relying on just the burden of proof, how high that is, and how the state has a lot of motive, not a lot of evidence. And so they're not going to lean into the double extortion theory that Charlie used unsuccessfully, and rightly so, at his trial. Second, I was shocked by the testimony of Luis Rivera. He's the hitman who cut the deal. He didn't actually shoot. He was the driver who was a member of the Latin Kings gang. The actual killer, Sigfredo Garcia, was not a member of the Latin Kings, but was friends with Latin Kings. So Rivera actually testified for the first time that the person who told Katie McBanois that Danny Markel would be at home and that he was leaving the next day on business was Wendy Adelson, and that the person who ordered the hit was Wendy Adelson. That's the lady who wanted Danny dead, not Donna. And so that's the first time we've heard that. That may come.
Wait a minute, hang on. I mean, so he's testified I think at least 5 or so other times, and he's never said that before.
He said that the lady wanted this. The lady. So
which could have been anybody. I mean,
yeah, he never said it was Wendy before, and that was a shock. Because the question is, are they going to ever prosecute Wendy? Well, I think after that first day, I think it makes it look like it's more likely than not that occurs. But first, they got to convict Donna. So those were 2 big surprises. The third was in the defense's opening statements how they had so much emotion, not just Donna, but the lawyer herself. Donna's lawyer was nearly in tears talking about how beautiful Danny was and how it was so wrong that the killers deprived the children of their beloved father. I'm thinking, you mean your client? And also calling him Danny. I want to be like Will Smith and go up there and say, get his name out of your damn mouth. You don't get to call him Danny. That's what his friends called him. You guys and your client despised Dan Markel, despised him, called him gibbers, made up a name, a pejorative name, never called him Danny like that, at least not in the later years.
All right. Well, I've got actually 2 videos. I'm going to play the shorter of the 2 where Rivera names Wendy. And then I want to break this down some more with Matt and Jonna because I've got questions.
Was there a reason the murder had to be done on the day that it was done?
I believe so. I believe he was about to leave.
Who was about to leave?
Markel.
About to leave town?
Yeah.
How did you get that information?
I got it from Tudo.
Where did he get the information?
From Katie.
How did she know?
Wendy.
You think Wendy talked to Katie and told her Dan Markel's travel plans?
Yeah.
Were you present for that
No.
phone call? Okay. But somehow you learned that Dan Markel was leaving town the day after he was killed.
Yes, ma'am.
So it had to be done that day or he'd be gone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that came through Garcia to you from Katie.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say Wendy, did you know who Wendy was at the time that all this happened?
No, ma'am.
Okay, but you did know there was a lady that you were helping get some kids back in Tallahassee.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
See, he didn't know at the time who Wendy was, as he says during his direct testimony there to the prosecutor. And we've got some of what he said on cross to get to in a little bit. But so my question, Jonna, would be, look, if he didn't know who Wendy was at the time, and I guess we're talking about the 2014 timeframe when the murder occurred, if he didn't know who she was, wouldn't that answer be, or wouldn't that testimony be based on hearsay or something? And might he be making some assumptions about who the female or the lady was that's involved?
That whole answer was based on a few levels of hearsay, but for some reason it didn't receive an objection from the defense. And my guess is, first of all, this is not a surprise to the prosecution. The prosecutor knew that he was going to point a finger at Wendy, which again, I guess the question that everybody wants to know is, when the hell is Wendy going to be indicted? But I also think that over time, this witness probably figured out that the lady was Wendy. He might not have known contemporaneously with what he was doing, but he knows now. And for some reason, the defense decided not to raise the hand, stand up, or object to that information, which is very interesting. Even though this is Donna Adelson's trial, the dots here are going to be so easily connected. I know I'm saying this very early on in this trial, but just based on what we know from the previous trials, this is going to be a tough one for the Adelson camp to defend.
Well, Matt, you've prosecuted countless murders and homicides, so put yourself in the shoes of that prosecutor. And I've been a prosecutor too, and I was like, look, if it were me, I might want to drill down on that and get him to establish that he's speculating a little bit. I get why the defense didn't object, because there he is pointing the finger at Wendy as being the mastermind and not grandma, which we want to talk about that too, the whole grandma piece of this. But, Matt, should the prosecutor have elicited some testimony that he might have been speculating a little bit?
Going back to what Jonna just said, and she's exactly right. I know Dave had the same reaction watching that. I think we're all kind of, free reviewers, we're all jumping out of our chairs going, why is there no objection to that? And I think you're right, Phil. I think that that must have been hashed out ahead of time. And he's previously referred to her as, quote unquote, the lady. Well, it helps Donna Adelson that the lady may be Wendy and not her. And I think all along, we've all assumed that the lady was Donna, since she was up to her eyeballs in this. I think the prosecution does need to be a little careful on that, Phil, because that is fraught for appellate challenge. And even without the objection, they can go with what's known as IAC and attack the defense for not objecting to that. So
ineffective assistance of counsel.
Yeah. And it must have been under a state of mind exception. I think this must have been hashed out in a pretrial motion because it's so obvious. And Donna Jonna is exactly right. There's multiple layers of hearsay plus sheer speculation on that with no objection. So it must fit into the defense's overall strategy. But they have to be very careful how they instruct the jury on that in order to insulate it from appellate challenge.
All right. Well, Dave, you and I had talked about this before, and we had like a little side bet going. I said, look, I think there's a reasonable chance that Donna tries to throw Wendy under the bus as being the sort of the mastermind, and you didn't think that was the case. And I'm not going to say I told you so, but anyway. But I was surprised that they came out of the gate with this. This was so fast into this case that they put Rivera up as and then both on direct examination and on cross-examination, he throws Wendy under the bus. And in fact, on cross-examination, which I have, but it's a couple of minutes long, I'll play it after you answer this, Dave. But do you think that the defense knew that Rivera was going to do this?
I don't think there are any big surprises like that. I agree with Matt. I think it was probably all worked out that because there's so many levels of hearsay, as Jonna correctly noted. So, but doesn't mean I wasn't surprised. I mean, I think those of us who are not the prosecutor or the defense lawyers were shocked. I'd never heard this before. And to get it in like that, I was trying to think what kind of exception. Maybe Matt's right, state of mind. Maybe it's not for the truth of the matter asserted, but it sort of is. So I don't know. I guess it was just worked out, but it definitely benefits the defense because I've always thought the lady was Donna. And to your point, you were right that Donna threw Wendy under the bus and then ran over her again. And perhaps it's because she didn't like that her daughter got the subpoena quashed for her. Remember, Donna wanted Wendy to testify. Wendy said, nope, you got to give me immunity or else I'm not. So maybe this is Donna's receipt to Wendy. But where I was coming earlier, Phil, when you and I were saying, I was saying there's no way Donna is going to take a plea or any way hurt Wendy at trial. Like, it's one thing to have her name come up in triple hearsay. It's another thing for Donna actually to cut a deal and testify against Wendy, which would never happen, or to testify in Wendy's future trial. I don't think that'll ever happen either.
All right, I got a video I want you to watch because I think we have to disagree a little bit more here, because I think Wendy knew good and well, not Wendy, Donna knew good and well that her lawyers were going to do this. And it looks like she's literally giving her lawyer permission to do it right.
Garcia, I'm going to show you what
Mr. Rivera.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I apologize. Mr. Rivera, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 50. Could you take a look at that and tell me if you recognize that?
Yeah.
And what is that?
Like a profile of everybody's face.
Okay. And did you make some marks on this for me and then sign it on March the 11th of 2025?
Yes, I did.
You just hold on to that for a second. Mr. Vera, when we met with you that day taking your deposition, and I presented that to you, you gave us information about what had happened, pretty similar to what you talked about here today, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And when we were done talking about those things and some information about Sigfredo and Katie, I presented you with what's in front of you as Defendant's Exhibit 50, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I asked if you would put the number 1 and circle it next to the person you know as Katie, who you said was in charge of this whole deal, correct?
Yep.
And did you do that?
Yep.
All right. And then I said, would you put a number 2 next to the person you say did this killing?
Yes.
And you did that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that was Sigfredo Garcia.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one was Katie McBanois, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I said, would you put a number 3 next to yourself on the paper? And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're the one who got the gun that was used to kill Danny Markel, and you drove the car that day. You didn't shoot him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then I said, if you would, please put the number 4 next to the man who was killed, and you did that with Danny Markel, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then I said, if you would, put the number 5 next to the lady that wanted the man killed. And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And was that with Wendy Adelson?
Yes, I did.
And then I asked you if the 2 people on the top of the page who have their pictures there and the names Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson, you see those on the top?
Yes, ma'am.
I asked you, as far as you know, were they involved in any of this? And you said no, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I asked you to put X's next to the people who on that page were not involved in this.
Yes, ma'am.
And you did that.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
All right, so there you have Donna's lawyer, through the state's witness, laying out, attempting to lay out that Donna and her husband had nothing to do with it, and that the mastermind literally was Wendy. And so you heard that they established this at a deposition several months ago, which, parenthetically, I'm very jealous of states that allow depositions in criminal cases, because where I practice in Georgia, we don't. In fact, we're not entitled to even the police reports until 10 days before trial. But fortunately, it doesn't take that long. But they were able to go and interview him and do this in a deposition setting. And so they literally had him mark up that document that threw, literally by name, Wendy under the bus and exculpated Donna. And what I don't understand, and I want you 3 to help me understand, is that why there were no objections to some of that, and why it was why there was no further cross-examination on that point, because I want to drill down with this witness okay, why do you think it was Wendy specifically and not just some female that's been referred to in the abstract? Who did you talk to and where are you getting your information? And try to get to the jury to see that there may be some speculation there. Jonna, what do you say?
This is bizarre. Now I'm even wondering, why the heck did the prosecution call this witness and call him very early on? Number two, why was the defense attorney allowed to bring her romper room own lineup questionnaire in a deposition and have the witness now you're going to put an X over here now. Okay, that's not suggestive. And then you're going to put a number 2 over here. And then look, put a 3 over your own face. What? Like, I've never seen anything like that in a criminal case or a civil case. And it seems to me that this witness would have been better had it been called by Donna's team and not the prosecution. But my guess at this early stage is that somehow, some way, it's going to come back around later on in the prosecution's case. And perhaps the jury's not going to be scratching their head so much and saying, well, wait a minute, if Wendy was the mastermind, why are we here in Donna's case? I'm sure the prosecution must have a plan.
Dave, you were the elected state prosecutor in a Florida jurisdiction for a long time. If one of your assistant prosecutors and I think this is a mistake, if they failed to, drill down on this point with this witness, how would you address that as a supervisor? Because I think that was a huge mistake. I think these are experienced prosecutors, and they should not have allowed that to be the last impression with the jury. I mean, you get what you take sometimes with witness answers. I get that, but you have an opportunity to do more cross-examination or redirect examination, if you would, to drill down on this so that the witness doesn't go home. That's like the last thing they'd heard before they went home for the weekend. And now they're going to move on to another witness. So Dave, you tell me, am I wrong about that, or did they miss an opportunity?
Georgia Kappelman is so good at this. She is the one who's done all the trials. She knows the most about this case than anyone in that office. I know the state attorney, her boss, and the state attorney knows this is in good hands. So he's deferring to her. And I don't think this really hurt the case because they have enough evidence to tie Donna to the case. And when they said that this is like a cable car, a train car, where the people only communicate with the people they touch, like a train car, they only touch the one in front of them and the one below them. And that's why I don't think it matters that Rivera heard from Katie, who was told that it was Wendy who put this in action. Okay. But the bottom line is Donna's money got into the hands of the killers. It was washed. It was wet. She's the one who, when she got the bump, she said to Charlie, this involves the two of us. And one other point on that. Do you know she didn't just throw Wendy under the bus. She threw Charlie under the bus. Her lawyer said, yeah, they're the ones that acknowledged that Charlie is guilty. So I don't know how they're going to now bring Charlie to the stand and use him in their defense. So essentially, she is saying this. All the family, yes, they were all involved. Wendy, Charlie, they were all involved. I'm the only one who wasn't, even though I was the one who paid for it all. Okay.
Well, Matt, that may, look, in the long game, that may very well play into the prosecutor's sort of long game of eventually getting around to maybe prosecuting Wendy. So on the one hand, maybe they don't care that they're throwing Wendy under the bus because they're getting ready to do the same thing with their next indictment possibly. But in the context of this trial, Matt, I think I would want to at least consider calling that witness back to the stand and sort of fleshing out for the jury that he may be speculating when he marks the defense's chart that way. What do you think?
Well, going back to what Dave said, that's why people really liked working for Dave. Number one, you've got when it comes to these high profile cases, Phil, one of the critical things for supervisors is to get out of the way. When you got media like this and you got a case, and this prosecution team has really done a fantastic job, and they've gotten conviction after conviction. They have done virtually everything right. And a good supervisor will get out of the way, offer support, even if it later turns out to be a mistake. And I don't think this is, because it's not a zero-sum game. All she has to do is say, well, he wasn't involved in that part of the conspiracy, and look at all the phone calls, which is really the damning evidence here. And I had a case once where it was the Tom and Jackie Hawks murder by Skylar De Leon out of Newport Beach. It was the couple that got thrown off the yacht. And my guys in Newport, my detectives, overlaid the phone calls, all the different phone calls and the computer searches. And just like they have in this case, where Donna would call Charlie, who then would call Katie, and who would call the hitman. And they did that over and over and over again. And when you overlay that kind of information, which I think is where the prosecutor's going, it is incredibly powerful in conspiracy cases. So I think Dave's right. I think Jonna's right too. It's like, this is going to come back. They're going to clean it up at the end. And then going back to Jonna's point, I think one of the reasons they didn't go heavy on this guy on cross is that they're eyeing Wendy, and they don't want to, if they impeach him too badly or they make him look like a liar, they've just undermined their star witness in her potential future trial. So I think that this was the right move by her supervisor to say nothing. Hopefully they really did stay out of the way. You got to let her cook, as they say. And I think they're doing a very good job.
At the risk of bouncing around too much, I know, Dave, you're going to have to go in just a moment, but you referenced the bump. And so for those of you who may not know what that is, was the case, I don't want to say it was cold, but it kind of hit a few roadblocks. And so the cops wanted to shake the trees, so to speak, and see what would fall out. So they sent an undercover to bump into Donna. Let's take a look, and I'm going to ask Dave about it.
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Luto for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuzo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
All right, so there you have the so-called bump. You talked about that. We see there that she calmly walked into the grandkids' school. She didn't call 911 or anybody like, but she did make some phone calls, didn't she, Dave? Who did she call and what did they talk about?
Well, if she was innocent, she would have called the cops or she would have thrown away the paper. She called her son and said, this involves the two of us. Notice how the undercover officer did not mention Charlie. Charlie's name was not mentioned. So why are you calling Charlie, the maestro who worked the hit? Keep in mind also, another really important piece of this video was mentioned by the prosecution after she said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, it's all on the paper. Well, what did she then do? She took the piece of paper, put it in her purse. She didn't read it. Wait, I don't know what you're talking about. It's in the paper. Okay. Put it in you don't read it? You don't look at the paper? That is conscious of guilt, or that's just evidence of guilt. I mean, and then she calls, not the cops, she calls the undercover agent, and she tries to negotiate with him and talk to him. And then at the end, she said something to the effect of, I'll call you back. Guilty. Come on.
That as the prosecutor, when you see the bump and the video, how do you explain that to a jury, and what do you tell the jury to make of it?
I'm sorry, was that to me?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So what you're doing, it's a conspiracy case, right? So she's going to argue exactly, or what Dave just said. If you're innocent under those circumstances, who doesn't immediately call the police? Another thing that I can't get over about this thing is that guy's your typical undercover narc, right? And by that, they used to call them narclings, like the young cops that do their first rotation in undercover narcotics. where you can mess them up as much as they want. You can grow the beard, shave the head, and all that. But as soon as they start talking, they're cops. You can hear it in his voice. Like, he's so unfailingly polite, and only a family of dentists, I think, would not immediately peg him as an undercover police officer. So yeah, what you argue is that's consistent with her behavior all along. I think the defense on this has always been and they haven't run this yet. They did not charge her with accessory after the fact. And Dave's the expert on Florida law here, but in California, and I know it's up to 30 years in the state of California, in the state of Florida, accessory after the fact is most of the evidence against Donna, including that, happens after the murder. They didn't charge it in the state of Florida, which means the prosecution has, to a degree, decided to go all in on this. And I really think if I'm the defense lawyer, I'm saying, yeah, she knew at that point.
Yeah.
And she was in on it at that point. She was signing all those checks on the dentist business payroll to Katie. But she learned about it afterwards. They didn't charge that. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you can't convict her for what she did after. I think that's where the defense ought to be going. And I'm with Dave on that. I'm really surprised they didn't lean in on that, or we haven't heard them say that so far. And am I right, Dave? Like in California, accessory was known as a lesser related in California, so they can still get the instruction. But I don't think that's the case in Florida, which means the prosecution, they're doing it exactly right, but they're kind of all in on those charges. And there is a defense there. Like, they should embrace everything she did after and say she learned about it, but it wasn't until later. I think that's the best thing they've got to go with. But again, not an expert on Florida law.
Just to answer your questions, Matt, it is not a lesser included charge of first-degree murder, and it would have to be charged separately. And it is a second-degree felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. So I don't know why they didn't just lean into that defense, except she is 75 years old, and she probably would say, no, I'm not pleading guilty to any charge, or I'm not even admitting to guilt on any charge. I either get sprung or I'm done, because if I get convicted of that charge, I'm really not going to make it out alive. So maybe she's the one who told her lawyer, we're going for it all. After all, her son, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, thought he would get away with everything. And that's why he took the stand as defense and blew up Katie McBanawa, who was so guilty as sin. She was given a plea deal, according to reports, that would have allowed her to have time served, walk free, as long as she turns on Charlie. She refused, and now she's serving life in prison. So it is part of all these defendants, this hubris that refuses, that prevents them from taking responsibility from their actions.
Well, since you mentioned her being the 75-year-old, Jonna, I've got some video of recent episode of MK True Crime where you got into that during jury selection, the whole thing about her being, like a grandma. But before we talk about that, I want to just say a minute to say thank you to all the almost 450 people that are in here live watching this with us. And of course, thank you to those who watch on video replay. And also I want to say thanks for the super chats. Law Dog has sent a couple of them. Thank you very much. And, I want to say thank you for that. And by the way, that will highlight something. It comes to a different part of my screen. It immediately sort of flags that. So if you have any questions for me or anyone else on the panel, feel free to ask a question. If you don't want to do a super chat, that's of course fine, but just mark it, say, here's my question, or preface it with the word question, because that also makes it easier to catch my eye. And I would like to have the opportunity, while these great legal minds are here with me, to maybe answer as many questions as you got. Now, let's talk about Jonna. Y'all did a great job. This was not one of the episodes that I was in, but you were hosting this episode of MK True Crime, and it was in the context of jury selection. And since we're talking about the prosecutors, I think they did a really, really good job. Let's take a look at this real quick. Video.
The prosecutor in this case was asking the jury whether or not they would be okay with convicting a grandma. Let's run that 6A.
Can it look like your grandmother? My young people? Number 5. Can a killer look like a granny?
I mean, it's all you in picture, but like anyone is capable of has the capacity to kill someone.
You could keep an open mind to the possibility that a grandmother could be a killer.
Yeah. Jonna, so you're let's just say you're the defense here. Do you lean into the grandma aspect of this, or do you tell your client to maybe heed the judge's warning and kind of just maybe come across a little more normal? What do you do?
You know, it's so interesting because the jury is always looking a client, a defendant up and down. So you don't want them to be too over the top. You don't want them to look like they're forcing some sort of sympathy from the side. But at the same time, when you look at this prosecutor asking the voir dire during jury selection, now she knows what she's doing because she knows darn well that nobody in the jury pool is going to say, no, there's no way some granny could commit murder. No, she's going to say that. What she was doing was priming the pump kind of in a salient fashion to say, hey, look, don't be persuaded by the fact that the defendant is old, right? Old people do bad things too. And let's not forget, this wasn't a recent murder. This is an old case, right? So Granny wasn't so granny-ish maybe 10 years ago. So she did that on purpose, again, just so that the jury will, whoever got selected, will know that don't be persuaded by the, the pearls and the gray bun, if you will.
All right, Dave, you're the prosecutor. What do you do when Granny's over there in the defendant's chair?
You do exactly what Georgia Kaplan did. You work it in jury selection. You make sure that the people there aren't going to go by sympathy. They're going to follow the evidence and the law. And that's why the judge had to step in, because I'm sure the prosecutor said something when Granny was crying during the testimony, during the opening arguments. She was the only one crying in the courtroom, which is shocking because she hated Danny Markel. She despised him.
Well, was she crying? Was she really crying?
Well, I thought it was crocodile tears, quite frankly. I think it was part of the show. And that's why the judge had to step in, because perhaps that's their best defense. Jury nullification. It's a granny. She's wearing a sweater, a cardigan. She has gray hair, big glasses. Are you going to put Granny in prison? So maybe that's it. And Phil, I've really enjoyed it. I'm sorry that I have to jump, but this is an all-star panel, so you don't need me. You got Jonna and Matt. These guys are stars.
Hey, appreciate you. I know you're traveling, Dave. Thanks so much, buddy. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you all.
Bye,
Thanks, Dave.
All right. So glad he could make it in for a few minutes. Matt, I don't know. I hope you were able to catch some of that because when I watched the theatrics in the courtroom, you could see the hands going up to the face, and I posted some video of this on my X feed. You could check it out there. I was unable to load it up for this show, but you could see that it's almost like she had like dry cheeks maybe, and she was just being very theatrical when the jury was in there. And I didn't see a lot of that when the jury wasn't in there.
There's he's a Superior Court judge now, a man who trained me, who's one of the very, very best I've ever seen in a courtroom, Chris Evans. And I watched Chris do a murder case. This is like early 90s. And there were similar antics from the defendant. And then his defense lawyer got up and shed a few tears. And he got up, he walks up, and the guy was brilliant. I'm like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? And he pulls this poster out, and it was Tom Hanks from the movie League of Their Own. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, there's no crying in baseball, and there's no crying over a victim when you're the person that killed him. And it was just one of those home run moments in a courtroom. And look, she absolutely hated this guy. And there's no question about that. The best evidence they have, and even the defense even acknowledged it in their opening statements, it's all about motive, right? Like she called him gibbers. She called him the asshole. She wanted her daughter, and this is a Jewish family, they're of the Jewish faith, wanted her daughter to dress his kids up as Hitler and move him to Florida because he was a deeply religious man. Like, this woman absolutely hated him. And those tears, I think, really came out at a bad time, because a lot of jurors, the danger of that is if they feel like being manipulated by her, I think the show is over at that point. When you're a juror and you feel like you're being manipulated by a criminal defendant through those crocodile tears, that comes back to haunt them in a big way during deliberations, in my experience.
You know, and Jonna, I don't know if you noticed this. One of the commenters I just posted up there talked about it looked like a paralegal or someone associated with the defense team. It's like hugging on her and rubbing on her, comforting her, and all that. And you know, I guess there's some place for that to some degree when you've got a emotional client. But how much of that really? How much of that is excess, and what do you do to prevent a jury from holding it against you as the defense team if you're sort of, I don't know, coddling your client a little too much?
Yeah, again, if it looks like it's drama, intentional drama, if it looks fake and unnatural, jurors are going to pick up on that. And then they're not going to like you as the attorney who's doing it, like coddling little granny over here throughout the whole, direct examination of whatever witness. And they're also not going to like your client. And part of this, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but people have often asked me, like, how important is it for the jury to like the defense attorney? You know, you go to a cocktail party and the question that I get most is, how can you defend guilty people? Right. And it's not really what we do, but it's an interesting question. So the affect in that courtroom is going to affect the jury. And if it's fake and forced, it hurts. It might not be why they, render a guilty verdict or not guilty verdict, but it's going to be duly noted.
Matt?
Well, Jonna, as usual, is totally right. Credibility is everything in front of a jury. It really is. When you're in the grind, and you know this, Phil, it's like it is so much a contest of impressions, and it's so much a contest of who you're going to believe. And if you have a defense, you work the defense, but those subtle little things, and what Jonna is talking about for the viewer is you will see this over and over again, especially by younger defense lawyers. They try to engage in all this nonverbal communication where they're touching the person, touching the defendant, and it's all of these. They must teach them in like public defender school or something, like hug your guy, put him in a sweater vest. If you can get some Harry Potter glasses, put those on his face, but hug him constantly. And it's a parlor trick. And if you get a really experienced judge or a really experienced prosecutor who's seen it enough times that they'll call them out on it, that can undermine their credibility unnecessarily. It's like it's the bridge too far. If they got a good defense, you can blow an entire case by that because you lose credibility. By the time you're giving your closing argument, which is critically important for the defense, especially in a case like this, they're not listening to you anymore because they think that you are a part of a trick, basically, an attempt to fool them.
Theatrical production.
Right.
Yeah.
Drama does not sell unless it's very subtle and done exactly right. And this was so overt, like you pointed out. The judge had to jump on it and call her out on it. Like,
hang on, let me show that. I showed that at the very beginning of the show, but we got a lot more people in here now. I want to show that video. It's about 50 seconds long, and then I want to compare it to another famous video of the defendant that we've seen.
Before we go on the recess break this afternoon, I do believe this merits a small bit of discussion on the topic. The matters that we've discussed at sidebar concerning emotional responses, I do feel it is important at this point. Mrs. Adelson, when the testimony is occurring or the evidence, I know you may have a natural reaction, but as best possible, you need to control your reactions concerning any head movements, any expressions of disagreement, or any emotional outbursts. The jury must decide this matter on the merits, on the evidence. Do you understand this? Very well. I do not wish to do this in front of the jurors at all, but it's very important that you are able to control your emotions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
All right, so that's one. Now let's take a look at this other video, which was taken. It's when she was arrested in Miami, I believe, trying to board a plane on a one-way ticket to Vietnam, a country with no extradition treaty. And I want you to look at the physical differences, and does she look different, or is her affect different? And then I want to have some questions. This is about a minute and a half.
New video tonight is giving us our first look at Miami-Dade police body camera video showing the arrest of Donna Adelson at Miami International Airport. She's the mother-in-law of murdered Florida State University law professor Dan Markel. Adelson and her husband were about to board a flight to Vietnam when she was taken into custody last November. As police explained what was happening, her husband removed her jewelry before police took her to jail. Take a listen to what unfolded as she was taken into custody in the jetway at MIA.
To you. Why do I have to give it? Because my attorney said not to. Why do I have to give it to you? This is evidence. Evidence. Do me a favor. She's under arrest. You can I have to go with you. I have to go. I have to go. You don't have that choice. Let me help you out. No, I have to stay. Please don't do this. Don't stay. You need to grab the bags. Take the bags. Yeah. And you need to wait outside. Okay.
My husband's almost 80 years old. He can't come with me?
Please, can I go? No, you can't join me there. Oh, don't do this, please.
Please.
Oh,
Someone's got to help him get home. This is terrible. You can't do this. This is insane.
Another body camera video shows her arriving at the jail in West Miami-Dade. Adelson has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation charges. There was more than an hour worth of body camera video released in this case. If you'd like to see it for yourself, you can find it on cbsmiami.com.
All right. So compare and contrast. I mean, I don't think that was a year ago. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it was last fall. So she doesn't look, this is just my opinion. I welcome yours. And of course, the chat's got a lot of opinions I see. She doesn't look, she looks a lot heavier. She appears to have gained some weight, which is understandable. She probably isn't getting a lot of exercise in jail. On the other hand, the food's not that great. So anyway, but she doesn't look to be that meek, right? In the arrest video, she doesn't have any apparent, at least that I could see, issues with hearing. But fast forward to today, and she looks to be a lot different. And you just got to wonder, is it real or is it theater? I'll start with, well, whoever wants to go first, you guys decide.
I wanted to say something, again, another aside, just in terms of when we talk about what the jury sees and how they internalize that. Remember the case of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp? The world turned against Amber Heard when she was the best. She gave good meme. She took the stand and she had those crocodile tears and all those facial expressions, and nobody believed a darn word of it. And that hurt her very much. And the same thing, maybe on a smaller scale, applies in real life, including in this case.
Yeah. I mean, someone just corrected me. Thank you for that. It was apparently almost 2 years ago. But nevertheless, I think the contrast in the video is striking to me, Matt. I mean, it's clearly a big difference. And obviously, if someone has physical infirmities, I mean, that's something that can't be helped. But I mean, part of me just wonders if this isn't being like caricatured just a little bit to put on the sort of make her look like the grandma that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and look, what stands out to me about that video is the cell phone. I mean, she's talk about not frail. She's ready to go fist city with a bunch of cops.
Yep.
You know, that reminds me, like, I don't know, a girlfriend that used to act like that with her cell phone. And shockingly later, I found out that she was cheating on me. You know what I mean? Like, if you're so innocent, why are you not, like, it's a bunch of cops. And if you remember that arrest, there were TSA, there were feds, there was FBI, there were local cops. There was like 12 police officers around that woman. And she's saying, no, I'm not giving you my phone. So that is the instruction that'll go along with that is what's known as consciousness of guilt. Yeah. I think that, again, like Jonna said, in that very common sense analysis that jurors are going to be instructed to use, their common sense and their life experience, that is one of the most condemning moments, I think, of all the evidence here. Now, again, if the defense is smart about it, I think they're going to argue, yeah, she knew at that point, and she'd been texting back and forth with Charlie, but she didn't know beforehand. I think that's probably, we're going to hear some version of that as an argument, but yeah, I mean, that's just a fantastic video. And that's one of the things that we see more and more now in criminal prosecutions since the advent of body cameras, right? You never know when there's going to be something really telling. I think that video says 1,000 words.
And not for nothing, it's going to come out that where was she going? She had a one-way ticket to Vietnam, and not for R&R. She was getting the hell out of Dodge, and that's also going to be not lost.
Jonna, do me a favor. I want you to now that you've said that, and I don't disagree. I agree with you 100%. Now, she's your client. You're in court. That video is played. How do you explain that to a jury in an innocent way?
Well,
as Matt said, it's consciousness of guilt in my view, and that's what the law calls it. But what does Jonna Spilbor, attorney for Donna Adelson, say about it when the jury is looking at her sideways?
Well, Donna Adelson herself has said, I was just going there to get some rest and relaxation. It's been very, very trying for my client to have to endure the death of her son-in-law, and then her son going to prison for the rest of his life, and the two grandchildren getting moved around, and oh my God, boo-hoo. Where else would a woman of her granny age go? Vietnam, of course. I hear they have a really good AARP program over there. I mean, it's BS. I don't know what the defense attorney is going to be able to say to this jury to make them believe that she was going there just for a vacation. And I would have a hard time. I probably wouldn't even float that if I were representing her. I would need more facts from her in order to present a much better defense of that piece of this puzzle.
I think, Matt, that, and I agree with Dave on this. He was talking about this earlier. I would make that part of my overall strategy to kind of go ahead and lean into the idea that she knew about all this, but after the fact, and then after the fact, she began trying to kind of help her kids maybe cover it up and other people to some degree, and that she also got scared about her own involvement. And yeah, she was trying to flee because she thought she was about to get charged and all this, because as we saw, and I can show a picture of the indictment again right here. Count 1 is murder. Count 2 is conspiracy. Count 3 is solicitation. All of those things would have had to happen prior to the date of the murder being on or about July 18th, 2024. So she could say, look, yeah, I was scared. I was running away. And it's not because I was conscious of guilt, but because I'm not guilty, but I was conscious that I had tried to maybe made some bad decisions with trying to help people after the fact. Maybe that would be how I would defend it. And, it seems to me like they missed an opportunity. If they were going to do that, they would have come out during openings, but they didn't do that, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, you think that they would go hard on that. In my view, that's her only defense. Everything else. I mean, that bump that you showed was everything she did about that indicated that she was part of the conspiracy. I mean, it's undeniable. And if they try to argue that there's some innocent explanation, she's going down. I can tell you right now. Like the only way to navigate, I think, all the things that she clearly did, including fleeing to Vietnam, is to say absolutely. She signed on to this afterwards. She was guilty as hell afterwards, but she hasn't been charged with afterwards. She's been charged with before. And ladies and gentlemen, there just isn't enough evidence of her involvement before. I think that's the only thing that they've got to work with. But it's going to be interesting. These are experienced lawyers. And I don't know. I think it's one of the great things about doing commentary, and I'm sure you both agree on this, is that I love watching other people's cases because nothing I say can screw it up.
No,
and I don't have to make those calls on this one. I got enough of my own that are hard enough. And when it comes to these high-profile murder cases, you're in there, and I'm sure you both had that experience. You're giving a closing argument. You got the cameras in the courtroom. You're mic'd up. And it's a big, giant adrenaline rush. And I never appreciated guys like me in the peanut gallery throwing peanuts at them. But that's the world we live in. And I'm trying to give credit where credit is due and be fair to both sides. But look, I think she's going down on this. I really do.
Well, Jonna,
I don't think a jury's buying any of this.
I think you're probably right, Jonna. Though, as Tiffany points out here in this comment, there's going to be the allegation that the cash money was delivered wet, physically wet to, and that it was stapled in $1,000 increments and all this. And I think the defense might push back and say, well, the money didn't come from Donna, but if they can link the money to Donna somehow, that's what they need to show that she was involved beforehand, right? So how do you deal? What's your theory about why this money may have been wet? Was she literally physically trying to launder the money by putting it in the washing machine or something to scrub it, or because she's just not smart, or was she trying to get rid of maybe DNA on it, or why was this money wet?
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Unless she was printing it herself, there's really no reason for it to be wet unless she was trying to remove fingerprints, something like that. As somebody who's not a career criminal, perhaps that's why. But I think the money would link her before and again after. The theory about her being accessory after the fact, the payment could also lean into that theory, which is unfortunate because she's not charged with that, and that's not really where anybody seems to be going, even though they should. And just to make one point on the prior discussion, in order on the Vietnam, she would have to Donna Adelson would have to take the stand, I think, to explain herself why she was going where she was going. And it's really early to even predict whether she's going to do that, but I would guess no. Like, I don't know how much money you guessed with Dave, Bill, on your other bet, but I got a $100 bill in my pocket. And I'm going to say that she's not going to testify.
Well, I might be tempted to take that bet, Jonna, because she has. It came out in earlier pretrial hearing just a few weeks ago. She stated that she's going to testify. Now,
really?
She can always change her mind, but yeah, that's what her defense team has said. So that was how Dave and I got on our whole thing about whether she's going to testify and throw Wendy under the bus. And I said, I think that's what she's gearing up to do. And he says no, but I think you're right. I think it would be really stupid because somebody like Matt Murphy is going to rip her to shreds on cross-examination. Right. Or on the other hand, now that we've seen how her defense team is going after Wendy directly by name in anticipation of her testimony, which is probably going to be Monday. As we're talking today, this is Saturday, the 23rd of August. It looks like day after tomorrow, Wendy's going to be up. So maybe they're trying to set the stage for that. But I think it's a 50-50 toss-up, Matt, whether she testifies at this point. I think it would be foolish, but I think she might do it.
Sometimes, and she's not a career criminal, like Jonna said, but, for the fraudsters, we've all seen that, they really want to testify. When your currency going through life is BSing other people and manipulating other people, sometimes it's hard to keep them off the stand, even when it's not the right move. And I agree with Jonna totally on that. Like, I think it's a terrible move on this case because these prosecutors are good. They're experienced and they're going to rip her. And I like the Johnny Depp analogy because Camille Vasquez, who weirdly enough was I coached her in mock trial in high school when she was a high school kid. She's the lawyer that tore apart Amber Heard. And there is like, these women are good. These prosecutors are good at what they do. They're very experienced, and they're going to have a field day with this. They are going to destroy her if she takes the stand. So it'll be great to watch, great to comment on. But who was it? It was Thomas Jefferson who said the greatest test of truth in our system is the art of cross-examination. Somebody famous a long time ago, I'm no historian, as you can tell, said that, and it's exactly right. Like you get 12 people, 500 years of collective common sense experience in the earth, and a hard, well thought out cross-examination, and they can always tell who's telling the truth, at least most of the time.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that I know this is true in my household. I don't know about yours, but sometimes we lawyers kind of slip into that cross-examination mode, and it can be really frustrating for people that we're just having, a discussion with. Jonna, you never do that to your friends and family, do you?
No. That's why I have no friends, Phil. I do it all the time.
Well, all right, guys. Where do you think? What do you think this is going Monday, and what can we look forward to out of the coming week in this trial?
Well, I think Yeah, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the same progression of witnesses that we've seen in all the other trials, Phil. It's going to, and they're moving through these witnesses very quickly. So the prosecution gave a pretty short time estimate. I think that they're going to wrap up their case. I believe they're going to wrap up before the end of next week, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I think that we're going to continue to see sort of focused cross-examinations like we have. I think they're going to get through these, and we're going to be into the defense case before we know it.
And Jonna, that defense case could be robust, or it could be what they've put on their witness list, and like they're stating that she's going to testify. That could all be a phantom, right? It could be a ruse. They don't necessarily have to put up any case. And of course, the burden of proof is always on the prosecution. Is it the kind of thing that you see a lot of, where the defense will sort of to keep the prosecution working and give them a bunch of witnesses that they never intend to call? Is that what's going on, or do you think there's going to be an actual defense case?
No, I think it's partly that. Plus, also, as a defense attorney, you don't want to ever be precluded from putting anybody on the stand. So you sort of give a witness list that might include people who you're not really intending to, but you don't want anybody to object if you do intend. But the reason why I made a face before is because if we look at the defense's opening statement, which wasn't a blockbuster, she is really going to, I think, this is a reasonable doubt case in her mind. So maybe she's not going to put up a whole lot of witnesses. She's simply going to say what she said in opening statement is, you're going to have theory, you're going to have motive, but you're not going to have any evidence. That's a reasonable doubt case. But in a circumstantial case, the evidence, it's obviously circumstantial means it's not direct. So there is going to be evidence presented from the prosecution. It's just not going to be direct evidence. It's still going to be powerful. So I don't know what she's going to do on defense. That's going to be a wait and see for sure.
Circumstantial evidence can be very, very powerful. I had a judge one time who, when I was a prosecutor and I was assigned to that judge's courtroom, and she said, there's a lot of people that are sitting in prisons in this state and around the country, convicted solely on the basis of powerful circumstantial evidence. And she was right about that. I think that's true. And I think that we're going to have to wait and see on what Donna does. But, Matt, I wanted to ask you specifically about this. She's got Charlie on the witness list, her son, who's already stood trial. He's been convicted. He's got an appeal going. He's trying to get a new trial. So the question for you is Charlie going to come to his mother's aid and say, yeah, it was all me, and maybe even with Wendy, and my mom didn't know anything about it? Or is Charlie going to say, you know what, I'm still trying to get a new trial. I'm not going to testify about this and stay mum? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think that Jonna, again, is right on that. It's that they're listing people so they're not precluded from calling them. And I think that if Charlie was prepared to come in and say, my mom had nothing to do with this, it was all me and these other people, we would have heard that in opening statement. And with his appeal pending, as soon as he does that, remember, the defense can't grant immunity. That can only be granted by the prosecution, and they're not going to give him immunity. There's a very rare thing known as judicial immunity. We ain't seeing that here either. There's no way this no-nonsense Judge Everett is going to do that. So Charlie is, in order to save his mom, who's 75 years old, he's going to have to come in and throw himself under the bus. I just don't see it happening. I think Jonna's right. I think he's on the witness list just in case, but I don't think he's ever going to take the stand. If he does, I'm sure you both watched the cross-examination of him the last time he testified in his own trial.
He didn't do well.
He was absolutely destroyed by that prosecutor. And, I would be shocked if he did it, but it sure will be interesting to watch if he does.
All right, Jonna, I'm going to give you the last word. We've been here in over an hour, but so I know you've got another media engagement to get to, but last word, what do you think coming up?
Oh, coming up. Well, we just, stuck our toe in the water on the prosecution's case in chief. And again, I don't think the defense opening statement was any sort of blockbuster. So we're going to have to slug along. I liked the way the prosecution started with the neighbor witness to the murder. It almost started like it had a feel for me, and I don't, and Matt, this is your realm. Had a feel like this is going to be a murder mystery. Boom, they start off with who done it, and now we're going to get to that. But the prosecution is going to have to wind Donna in to this conspiracy, knowing full well that she did probably a lot to cover her tracks, which was another feeling I got from the defense opening statement. Like, you're not going to see any evidence, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, because my client's real good at hiding it. Like, that's not the impression that you want to leave, but that's the impression that I got when I was watching them later. So the prosecution's going to slog along, I think, on Monday.
All right, Jonna Spilbor, everyone, big round of applause for Jonna. Can you hear him clapping? I can. I appreciate you coming so much. I know you got another thing to go to, so we'll go ahead and say goodbye, and we'll see you. We'll see you soon. Where will we see you soon, other than our MK True Crime?
You're going to see me soon on MK True Crime. You're going to see me on Newsmax later today. You're going to see me on Newsmax on Monday morning. But my favorite is with you guys on MK True Crime. So see you there real soon.
All right, take care. And Matt, before you go, I wanted you to, somebody in the comments had mentioned your book. I wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything you want to say about your book and what people could learn from it.
No, thank you. So in fact, got a copy right here. It's called The Book of Murder. It's about my career. I spent 17 years as a prosecutor, as a homicide prosecutor in Orange County, California, 26 as a deputy DA, 4 in sexual assault, 17 in homicide. And they let us specialize there. So we would go to all of our own crime scenes. It was called a vertical unit. And we take the case from the night of the murder or the day of the murder all the way through the sentencing and every aspect. And it's an amazing experience. So I walk the reader through my career, the different kinds of cases, what first-degree murder is, second-degree murder, and some of the bigger profile cases that I did, like the dating game killer Rodney Alcala, the Tom and Jackie Hawks murder case, which I just mentioned. Dirty John was one of mine, famous podcast. And it's basically, it's part memoir, a little bit about my ridiculous love life and how it intertwined with the job that I did for so long. And so it's available on Amazon, pretty much anywhere you get books, Barnes and Noble, and there's also an Audible version, which thankfully is doing very well. So it's Disney Books.
All right, big round of applause inside the law here with Matt Murphy, everyone. Matt, thanks so much, buddy, and we'll see you soon. All over the place, right?
Yep, all over the place. Thanks for having me, Phil. Really,
right, you bet. All right, that was fun, guys. I really appreciate those folks taking the time out of their days. I know that Dave's traveling, Matt's traveling, and they took time out to come here inside the law to help break down this crazy story. And I want to say again, thanks to all of y'all who are here. This, of course, if you're new here, welcome. If you haven't subscribed, please consider liking and subscribing. That helps other people who might be interested in this kind of content find this channel. We use this, I think, and I hope, as a somewhat of a learning environment. We want to show people about the real justice system, what it really is like, and not what you may think it is if all you do is get your legal information from, say, TV or movies. But we want to talk about the real thing, the way it really works in the real world. And look, if I can leave you with one bit of advice, if you ever get caught up in court as a witness, just do yourself a favor and don't be this guy.
Man, can I get a water or something? I'm so high right now, y'all. I'm about to go to sleep on y'all ass. I ain't gonna tell you no lie.
Yes, you may. We're gonna take a break soon. Hang on.
And that was a witness in Fulton County Superior Court in a case brought by Fulton DA Fonnie Willis against the what is called the YSL RICO trial. And that was a witness who showed up high as a kite. So anyway, that's my free advice for the day. Don't be that guy. And with that, we'll leave it there, and I'll see you back here next time inside the law. Thanks, everyone.